Welcome to the Babies in Business Podcast. Join your hosts, Rachel and Avram Gonzales, real-life parents and business partners. Each week on Babies in Business, Rachel and Avram create a space for entrepreneurial parents to find their own way. They'll dive into insights on topics like leadership, efficiency, self-awareness, budgeting, and human psychology as they nurture their family and build their business. Here's your hosts, Avram and Rachel.
Welcome back to the Babies in Business Podcast. It's Avram and Rachel here, just taking a little lunch break to record another podcast for y'all. And we're trying out some new microphones today, which we're pretty excited about. Dual track action, getting nerdy with it. Shout out to Miguel Rodriguez over at Mariposa Marketing for the suggestion on upgrading our microphones. We're loving it so far. Today we want to talk about energy management versus time management, because we found as our family grew and our business grew that we could project manage the heck out of things and find time in our days for all of them, but many days we didn't have the energy to actually complete those tasks.
Yep.
And there's a lot of factors that influence that, especially when you have young children. Sleep can be a big factor.
Right. But it can also be like you have energy one day and I don't, or vice versa. So it's not just energy management in general, but it is knowing your partner's energy level and how you can come in. Maybe you're, full throttle, you're ready for the day and you've got so much energy because you slept really well and the other person has been up all night.
Right. I think a decent place to start the conversation could be around men versus women.
Sure.
Our energies are very different. And I've read different things about it. I've read that the man's rhythm is in a 24-hour cycle, right? And his productivity, his testosterone is highest first thing in the morning.
Okay.
And then over the course of the day, it gets depleted.
Okay, got it.
Right. So the ability to focus, the drive, all of that early morning, and then it starts to wane in the afternoon. So
that makes sense.
Right. So you're looking at me and
With
you're
my
like,
experience.
that makes sense. Yeah. So tell me about now you've heard that.
Yeah.
How that impacts how we arrange what I do in a day.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's crucial that you get work done at the beginning of the day. And that if you're going to get work done, that's the only time that we're going to get that done. And it's so helpful to know that when planning, because both of us are planners. And it's really, really helpful that when we're planning our day, the consideration is your energy first, because keeping you busy is number one important thing right now. And my role can be anytime that I can find time. So knowing that, it just really helps us to capitalize on what we're going to get from you.
Right. And what we do and don't put in those morning hours before noon.
1,000%. It's kind of like our, if you listen back to our other episode about the power hour, we really guarded that hour and we really guard the hours that the nanny is here. That just so happens to be your power time or your power zone of the day.
We'll do things like we will do our best to make sure that any meetings that I have are in the afternoon, because sometimes, my personality, meetings and talking to too many people in a day can drain my energy. So we do our best to guard that time, guard my energy in the morning so that I can be productive. And then if the plan goes off the rails, it's my least productive time anyway. And it's not so bad that I can spend time with the kids while you do something or whatever.
And you can also get really, sometimes, so your cycle is a 24-hour cycle, that's what you were saying. But also think about it in terms of, in my experience, of the week. So your energy also changes throughout the week, gets a little bit less throughout the week. Wednesday, it's kind of the tipping point, and then Thursday's more tired, or just kind of the week has run you down, and then Friday, same thing. So also keeping that in mind, that if we front load the week with important things that maybe take more of your energy, and then the latter part of the week. Also, something else I've noticed for you is that it is very important for you to accomplish something every day that you have the expectation of work. Even if it is a small task, because at the end of the day, you are going to look back and wonder, what did I do?
Sure.
So I've noticed that as well with you.
Yeah. Yeah. A friend of mine, Matt Dillingham, shout out to Matt, gave me a shout the other day, invited me on his podcast and was asking, when's a good time to record? And he'd record like Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I was like, dude, Mondays, Wednesdays, my energy's high. I'm cranking stuff out. By Fridays are great days. Today's a Friday. We're recording this on a Friday because energy for other tasks has been diminished. Creative things like this seem to give us energy back. We do a lot of planning on Fridays because the energy to do like really serious focused work is kind of down.
Right.
Let's talk about the female energy.
Yeah.
Right? So again, read some things, been learning some things that for a lot of women, their cycle will follow, coincidentally, their menstrual cycle, right?
Yeah.
So you're on a 28-day-ish cycle where, unlike a man's whose resets every day and starts with a lot of energy in the morning and then depletes by the end of the day,
Yeah.
at certain points in your cycle, energy is highest, and at certain points in your cycle, energy is lowest.
Yeah. And to plan around that. That's what you'd read, right?
Yes, and that's an interesting concept. It's something that you can't really manipulate or do much with when you're an employee.
Yeah, it's
But
true.
that's why this is the Babies in Business podcast. This is for business owners with kids. You have the ability to choose your schedule and plan accordingly.
Right. Well, and I've had the benefit of being off of a cycle for the last 9 months. So that hasn't really come into play, but I definitely see it, there are times of the month where I am just less, there's not much energy and I'm not really feeling well. Maybe there's some cramps involved, stuff like that. And then there are other times when I just have so much energy. I feel like I could conquer the world and really play to those strengths. So the way that we play to your strengths and make sure that you get something done in those morning hours, finding out what it is that gives you that sense of accomplishment. And like you said, it's like a 28-ish day cycle. So what is it that you'd like to accomplish this month could be a good benchmark for females, maybe. For me, if I look at it at the day level or even the week level, I can end up just feeling like a failure because maybe that day was a really bad day for me energetically. And maybe that week was also a bad week. So when you look at the whole month as a whole, then you can actually feel really good about it. That's been my experience because I can actually see where I succeeded and where I actually really blew up my expectations, blew it out of the water.
So this is some of the differences we've seen in male versus female, your rhythms, your natural cycles. There are other things that impact our energy on a regular basis. Let's talk about kids and the unexpected, but then let's also talk about living in your strengths versus in your weaknesses.
Sure.
Because both of these things have an ability to just zap all of your energy very quickly.
Sure. I mean, if you're a person that thrives on set rhythms and schedule, well, welcome to parenthood. That is no longer possible.
Yeah.
For me, that's been my experience anyway, is that things aren't very predictable and you do have to shift. And it's kind of, I don't know, I find myself often just asking the question, what is it that I want in this moment? Would I like my child to feel loved and have that overall feeling? Or do I really, really need this thing to go my way right now? Is that the important thing? So I find myself asking those kinds of questions when I'm with Lincoln. Gosh, I waited so long. I was 35 years old when I had him. And I waited so long to have this little boy. And I really enjoy being around him. So I just when I'm maybe struggling and I'm in the heat of the moment where I just can't take any more noise or whatever it is, or pulling on my leg and he's pulling me one way and I need to go the other way, whatever those scenarios are, I really try to be present with the fact that I asked for this and that I am so happy to be a mom.
Yeah. I think when your expectations bump up against reality,
Yeah.
especially being driven in business and in our roles, it's really easy to be frustrated with the fact that your expectations not meeting reality. And I find that really messes up my energy too.
Absolutely. Exactly. So kind of taking that step back to see, okay, so maybe I just need to have the conversation with myself about reality right now, because that's where I'm living. I'm not living in the fantasy world where everything goes my way
Yeah.
and it goes to plan, because it doesn't. Not every day.
Not every day, not guaranteed that. So I think I've found myself having to adjust expectations on a very regular basis to maintain a positive attitude.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. Positive attitude, positive energy, and also just, we can meet them, we can match their chaos, or we can come in with some calm and introduce and just stay calm, and we invite them to be calm with us, because those feelings and that energy is contagious. And really, they're learning. They're not little human beings that are just miniature. They literally don't have all of the tools that we do. So I remind myself of that often as well.
Yeah. The whole managing our energy topic, I think, is interesting because, the quality of our work is also affected by our energy. So I think about how, you go to a really nice sushi restaurant, the sushi chefs, they do not talk.
Yeah.
There's a reason for that. They don't want to imprint their emotions and their thoughts on the food. So they don't talk when they're preparing it. Do you know that?
I didn't know that.
Yeah, something like that. It also makes me think about, I've been to like some conscious cooking workshops and stuff, and they really talk about, the energy that you're preparing the food with. You hear stuff like, well, it's made with love and it just tastes different. The energy that we cook it with affects how it tastes and how it feels. So for us to think that our energy doesn't impact the work that we do for our businesses, our customers, and our team members, is missing a really huge part of the puzzle. And again, that's why this topic is important.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's like it's managing our energy in the sense of, if you have the energy, use it, but it's also how are you approaching certain tasks or situations in your life. So there's a couple ways to look at it.
I think a good place to round out, and we just mentioned this, we talked about the kids aspect. We also talked about living in our strengths versus our weaknesses. I think we can touch on that because we have other podcasts we've shared about. We'll link them up in the show notes. One of them is specifically about the Clifton Strengths Finder. One of them is a very early episode. I think it's episode number 4, about empowering team members and living in their zone of genius, something like that. And here's what we found when it comes to energy management in regards to our strengths and weaknesses. First of all, if you're doing something that's not in alignment with how you are wired, it will drain you of energy.
Yes.
So you have to be really careful about where you place those things in your schedule. Taken us a couple years working together to figure out what those things are for ourselves and each other.
Sure.
And we figured out that for me, if my energy has been really depleted, we need to put something creative in.
Yes, absolutely.
Fun and creative.
But also have you feel like you have the time to do it.
Yeah.
There's a caveat.
Yeah, and that's a whole other subject, right?
It is.
So we'll just stick with the easy part of it first and maybe not get into that part, but stick something creative in. That always helps. And then secondly, there are the frogs that you just do not want to eat, right? And I know some dude wrote a book about eat the frog first, but listen, if it's a task that traditionally drains your energy every time you do it, I would advise not doing that first.
Right.
Find a way to delegate it, or if you can't, just stick that one item at the very end of the day and do that as the last thing.
Sure.
But if you do it first, it'll tank your productivity for everything else.
Well, and for you, I think that we have found that sometimes that frog is something that you actually shouldn't be doing, and I can do that task. It may not be done to maybe the quality that you would like, but it's still done to specifications, and it's okay that it's not perfectly done maybe the way that you would have done it.
Yeah.
And I think we had the conversation yesterday that something like that was brought up where you're just like, I really don't want to do that. And I said, well, here's the deal. Let me do it, and it's just going to get done. How do you feel about it just getting done as opposed to you having to do it?
Totally different.
Totally.
Right, and that's a huge nugget that Rachel just dropped. If it's draining you, give it to somebody else.
Yeah. It doesn't even have, like, they may surprise you and do it better than you ever thought that they could do it because you thought that you were the only one that you could do it.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that might just be the biggest takeaway from this episode, right? Because you can shuffle your schedules, you can do all the stuff that we've done. It all helps. But if you are always doing tasks that drain you and would be better suited for a different personality, different person, they need to be delegated, because that's going to be the one thing that kind of erodes your energy over time.
Yeah. And if you feel yourself asking, oh my gosh, why did I get into business? I'm always doing this kind of thing. Well, those are the things you need to get off your plate as quickly as possible. There are things that you do in your day, in the work that you do, that you really love. Try to get rid of everything else to a team member that actually really relishes that task. Because I just so happen to be that person that loves the tasks that you hate.
Wonderful. Life's good with Rachel. Yeah, life's really good.
Yeah.
You can, oh man, I just lost my train of thought, but that's okay. Yeah, there's so much to this. We've played with this a lot. I know that like when Rachel was on a tear, like earlier this week, she was doing something, and we were getting into the early afternoon, and she was still working on stuff. Both babies are up, and she was just going. And it's like, look, when her energy is there and she's this motivated, find ways to get everything out of her way so that she can just bear down and just hammer through it, because that's, you were just flowing, right? And you don't always have that energy available at all times.
That's true.
So it's like when it's there, we just ride it.
Well, and then if you look at it too, the things that I did really it was so nice that they were done that day because I didn't have time later in the week for those very tasks, and they were time sensitive.
They were, yeah. So we'd love to hear your thoughts, time management versus energy management. You know, what are things that have worked for you? We talked about men versus women. We talked about the impact that children have on your ability to manage a schedule and your energy. And then we finished up talking here about living in your strengths versus your weaknesses. We'd love to hear if there's some other things that you consider in building your business while raising a family. Hit us up on social media at babiesandbizpod. You can also email us, hello@babiesandbiz.com. We'd love to hear from you. As always, we love your recommendations and 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Still working on those, and appreciate you for tuning in to this week's episode. We'll catch you on the next one.
Bye for now.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of the Babies in Business Podcast. Who do you know that would benefit from hearing this episode? Share it with them and post about it on social media. You can find the show notes for this episode, free downloads, and connect with the rest of the community at babiesandbiz.com. We'll see you next time.